Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine with Pick and Pay and what is a particularly South African corner of London. We're not in Wimbledon, which is the usual South African corner, but we are in somewhere that's just as South African. It's a restaurant called High Timber. It's right on the edge of the Thames. I'm surrounded by bottles of extraordinary South African wine, and this restaurant itself is owned by the guys from Jordan Wine Estate in Stellenbosch, so it really feels like a home away from home for a wine drinker from South Africa, and all the more so because I've got some pretty high-profile South Africans with me today. Now, you'll remember the incredibly well-dressed gentleman to my right, Greg Sherwood, Master of Wine, pretty much runs the wine industry in the UK. He was on my home turf last time. This time, we're in London with him. The gentleman next to him, who looks even younger and even smarter, is a guy who was christened Peter Ferreira, but is known in the industry as Bubbles. And if he's known as Bubbles, you can probably guess what kind of wine he specialises in. And then two guys who maybe don't make quite so much wine, but certainly drink a bit of it, and are two great South Africans, Dean Elgar, South African opening batsman, and Morné Morkel, overplaying with Surrey. Guys, welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us on Dan Really Likes Wine. Good to have you back in particular, Greg. Before we get into the wine, we're going to taste two very special wines. Guys, you've spent a bit of time now in London, getting a little bit homesick, surrounded by all this great South African wine?
Yeah, always. You know, I mean, the wine in South Africa, I don't think you can find any better. I argue with my wife all the time. You know, she's adamant that Australian wine, Binfolds and those sort of things. But yeah, I'm a big fan of South African wine. I bought a guitar about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I found the more wine I drink, the easier it is for me to go from a G to a D. So, you know, for me, that's why I'm a big fan.
Dean, does wine play a big role in the Elgar lifestyle?
I'd like to say I'm more of a wine drinker than actual knowledge of what I'm actually drinking. So the wine definitely does the trick for me. I don't get to drink a lot of wine in the UK. I feel that back home it's a lot easier with the climate. And with saying that, we've had weather in the UK recently that definitely promotes a lot of red wine drinking.
We've come to a terrific spot to try some wine. Greg, this is it's a real temple to South Africa, both wine and food. I think you spend a bit of time here. What makes High Timber quite so special for you?
It's as you say, it's a real mecca. It's you've got the involvement with Gary and Kathy Jordan, with Nalene Strauss, a Free State girl, and also previous very famous restaurateur in Johannesburg, and she's transferred her skills to London, and it's really become kind of a real go-to destination spot for anyone looking for great food and great South African wine. And of course, we're sitting in her fantastic cellar with some real gems, really special bottles. Cape Winemakers Guild wines. I mean, it's everything here, and some international wines. So great meat, great red wine. You know, what not to love.
Pretty good combination. They're going to struggle to get us out of the cellar, in particular because we've got some really good South African wine and an absolute genius when it comes to making Cup Classique in particular. Before we get into your wine, Mr. Ferreira, just the label itself, Graham Beck, helped by small occasions like, let's say, Barack Obama's inauguration, Graham Beck has become not just a leading South African brand, but you've now got a global brand, which is why you spend so much time travelling the world celebrating South African bubbles.
Yeah, we are very fortunate in that sense that, we've become a specialist producer. And, we have tidied up our act as such, looking back at the history of 30 years at Graham Beck. We are a specialist public producer. And yeah, we have a beautiful offering that we can take into the international market. What I've brought today is a beautiful Chardonnay, which we call a Blanc de Blanc. And it's a vintage 2014. And this wine has spent 4 years on the lees in the secondary fermentation.
I'm seeing a bit of a blank look there from Dean Elgar. And they're going to be a lot of people who watch Dan Really Likes Wine, who love wine, but don't know all of the technical stuff. So break that down for us. What does that mean? 4 years on the lees, secondary fermentation for somebody who just enjoys their wine. What does that mean in basic terms?
Well, in basic terms, the wine undergoes a secondary fermentation to capture the bubbles naturally. So it's a natural sparkling wine done in the champenois method, the champagne method, because that's where we all went to learn the process. So it really involves a secondary fermentation where we built up the natural pressure but the yeast has done its work and then falls out as a sediment, and that's what we refer to as the lees. So it will remain on that yeasty sediment for a minimum of 4 years before we will then prepare the wine to go to the market without the yeast.
All right, well, if I can ask you to pour some for us, because we've got
sure.
a challenge, and Peter, you don't actually know about this challenge because I'm only revealing it now. Today we decide once and for all on Dan Really Likes Wine, whether it is wine or cricketers that are South Africa's best exports to the UK. I think we send them over in equal volumes at the moment. In fact, if we bring rugby players in and include Sale Sharks, we're probably outdoing the wine by the sport. Before we give it a taste, champagne celebration moments. You guys have had plenty of them. What would have been the biggest moment for celebration in the two cricket careers here?
Oh, I think you have to ask Morné there. He's played a lot longer with the Proteas than what I have. But I'd have to say it was potentially a series win against Australia in Australia. It was also my first experience with the Proteas test side. I think it was back in 2012, 2013, and it was an awesome moment in my career. And beating the Aussies on the home turf, you don't get much better than that.
You'd have to celebrate that a little more mutedly though, given your life.
Kick him out.
Oh, well, I was told never to shy away from a Chardonnay, so I'm quite excited to taste this. But I can't, beat that. I think last year, winning in England the championship. This is the first time in 16 years that Surrey won that. So that is a big celebration. A lot of champagne flew that day. We won it actually a week before, and our chairman flew down with a helicopter and brought cases and cases of champagne. So that was, to be honest, the most champagne that I think was consumed in one day, celebrating that. So, yeah.
Which leads nicely into the question of champagne versus Cap Classique. Obviously, Peter and I are both very, very objective here, and we know that Cap Classique is much better than anything the French make. In terms of the market here, how has a Cap Classique, a South African equivalent to champagne, done in making inroads into the UK market?
It's quite interesting. I was in Norway about 2 weeks ago, and I'm speaking about sparkling wines around the world and just trying to explain how other styles from all over fit in with the kind of main category, your competitor, which is cemented your champagne category. But since sparkling wine has become a beverage for all occasions, not just for birthdays, Christmas and celebrations, it's opened up a whole market for Prosecco, MCC, Franciacorta, Cava from Spain. So there's all these occasions and different pricing. So champagne's trying to stay at the premium level. Once you establish and get a foothold with like some of your brands in the market internationally, then you can start increasing the prestige and some of the prestige cuvées. So there's a lot more opportunities to drink. And certain of those big celebrations, maybe they'll stick to champagne, but there's a lot of doors opening for Method Cap Classique and some of the other styles from around the world, which is great.
Well, let's see how this one goes. Cheers, guys.
Thank you very much.
First of two for today.
Cheers, man.
And, thank you, Mr. Ferreira.
Thank you.
Oh, that's glorious.
Wow.
So 100% Chardonnay. The fruit comes from Robertson, where it's grown on limestone soils. And Robertson is considered a slightly warmer area than other regions, but thanks to global warming, everybody's catching up to that. The sun is even shining. I truly believe this wine has got beautiful complexity.
Let's get the panel's views. Dean Elgar?
Very good.
Very good. There we
Are
go.
you bowled out now?
I've had about 5 other tasters before this, so far is the winner.
Big a lot. Morné?
Yeah, I can't. It's just incredible. I love it.
You're a happy man.
Fantastic
The
quality.
expert view here?
It's very good. It's hard to beat a great Chardonnay from South Africa, often normally referred to as Blanc de Blanc, but really, really good. And I think it's one of your best wines. And this is probably the wine we sell the most of Beck. It's fantastic.
There's a lovely refinement and elegance to this.
Yeah, it's also stylistically Blanc de Blanc or Chardonnay really has to me the most attraction. So we put a lot of effort into it, and we have a strapline back home, and we say celebrate what matters. And I guess, you know, if you want to celebrate that amazing win you had in Australia, that's a good enough reason. But, you know, there's many other things that we can celebrate.
Well, Dan really likes wine scale is very different to the very controversial Greg Sherwood scale he's always fighting with people about on Twitter. When it comes to either a Cup Classique or a Chardonnay, it is, could I have this for breakfast? And in this case, technically yes. So you pass Peter Ferreira, you get my thumbs up for it. So I'm very happy with this. And very interested to compare it because we now have the second wine, and this is in deference to where we are today. The restaurant is owned in part by the guys who bring us the Jordan wines. They do a wonderful job. I actually had some of the Inspector Perringway Shannon in the airport lounge last night before flying out of Johannesburg. I think it's a recent 5-star on platter. This is their Chardonnay. Talk us through what we might expect here.
Yeah, I really, if Gary and Kathy doesn't mind me speaking about their own wine, they are an amazing. This wine has got an amazing track record. It is their prestige Chardonnay that we produce, their flagship. It's called 9 Yards. And, you know, Gary, with his incredible love for geology, has a fairly understanding of where to plant the right variety on the right soils in Stellenbosch. And I really do respect them immensely. And this wine has got its own natural track record. On a few occasions in the past, 5-star platter wines, and really amazing. And I'm really
And
loving to taste
often the
it.
base for his Cape Winemakers Guild Chardonnay, so it's kind of based around a top selection of his 9 Yards. So special wine.
Chardonnay fans, guys? I know not everybody is.
Yeah, I said it earlier. I love a little Chardonnay, especially moving from Pretoria to Cape Town. I think that's was a big thing for me, getting to know the wines a little better. You know, go fish in the morning, catch a nice little yellowtail, and then afternoon dry with
It's a tough life being a regular, isn't it? Sheesh.
It's tough when you're retired.
But yeah, no, it's good.
Dean, Chardonnay man, anything particular you do or don't like?
Definitely, especially around the pool. It's nice Victoria summer's day. That's right up there, but that's all they have to do for now, I think.
But you know, the beauty about this is natural, minimum intervention. This wine is naturally fermented by its own yeast coming from the grapes.
I mean, this is a wine that's acquired a massive following. Sells out quite quickly. Naleen tends to have gets preference for her allocations here. But I know as a merchant in London, we get offered once a year, and we take, and then it's gone. And but it is a fantastic wine, and it's a kind of different expression of Chardonnay, but compared to say your bubbles, but it's one of South Africa's better, more interesting ones.
Yeah, I think we should finish this bottle.
Take 17. I'll give it to Jerry.
Wow.
But it's about the texture. To me, a wine needs to have texture, and texture to me is sort of layers. If you will always be surprised if you've tasted it, sort of thought about it for a few seconds or a minute or two, and go back and you find something new. The wine's speaking to you, and
This is very good.
And it's a Chardonnay, that you can happily drink a few glasses of just on its own, but it's also going to have so much fun with a whole pile of food. It does both jobs brilliantly.
for sure.
But what's great about this wine especially is it's got this lovely richness, but it's got this fantastic acidity as well, which just frames the wine so beautifully on the palate. And the oak is just, I think, perfectly judged. So yeah, with food, rich dishes, or even just by itself, it's just, there's so much going on there. Fantastic wine.
Adding this to the Elgar cellar in Pretoria,
Yeah, definitely.
which is actually a small
Cellar's too
cardboard
small.
box upstairs.
It's not like this, I'm afraid.
So it's been some wonderful wine. I know we have lunch waiting, so we're going to need to head off in just a second. Dean, last thoughts on wine? Maybe a career drinking wine once the cricket comes to an end?
Oh, I don't think I'm going to be this size then, Dad. Well, I don't think wine's ever going to be out of my my bracket of expressing myself as a person. So I'm always a fan of the various blends and various wines that are about. And luckily today, thank you, got to taste some brilliant wine.
We certainly did. You got a bit of pressure on you, Morné, because you've got to fly the South African flag high, which you're naturally suited to doing when you get back to Australia, and convince your wife that that rubbish they produce over there is nowhere near as good as South African.
It's the vinegar in Australia. This is honestly, that is unbelievable. I actually don't have words for it. But yeah, so thank you for today. It's special to see you guys here and to sample the wine. And definitely will be going home with me. Yeah.
Peter, just on your travels, are you seeing that South African wine is getting a surer footing?
Yeah, I think we've come to a point, obviously with emphasis on bubbly. We finally are being noticed. Finally, we are hitting the radar. But it's tough work. We actually have to walk with a bottle under our arm. And still, we still fly the South African flag before we fly the brand flag. And to me, I think there's a place, there's much more room for beautiful South African wines to be enjoyed in the international market. We have no reason to stand back. I think the price point quality ratio issue is really something that we own, that a lot of people are envy about us.
I couldn't agree more. Final word, Mr. Hanford, running the wine industry in the UK?
No, the industry's changed and the consumers have changed, and everyone is just so hungry and open to new wines from South Africa, and they embrace the wines, whatever the style, and we've got such great diversity there, and it really makes my job easy. It never stops, you keep convincing, but certainly for real connoisseurs and collectors and people interested in wine, if you got, once you've got wines in your cellars and you're drinking them and they can age and there's pedigree, you're sold, and people really kind of turn and move to other countries. They'll always have a soft spot, I think, once they've been convinced, and we've got the quality, and we're hopefully putting enough of the stuff in the people's cellars and they're drinking enough of it. So I think, Peter, there's a lot of potential, and I think I tell everyone that the future's bright, and it's the sky's the limit, actually.
I think Dean can help me with that. Everywhere we play over the world, people always speak about South African wine, and how beautiful it is. So, like you said, there's definitely this is just a matter of finding a way to get it and spoil the people, because I'm missing out.
Guys, thank you all very, very much indeed. We've got two great spaces of South African ambassadorship, the wine and the sport, and to bring you all together here today at High Timber has been really special indeed. So thank you for joining us this week. Remember, jump on to Pick n Pay, have a look at that online wine club if you're looking for some wine. See if you can find some of the great Graham Beck, some terrific stuff from Jordan. We're going to head off to have some lunch. To Peter, to Greg, to Dean and to Morné, thank you very much for being with me on Dan Really Likes Wine, and we'll see you again next week, provided we've finished having our long lunch here at High Timber. Goodbye.